Hi, I'm Alexis Williams.
And I'm Jorge Alvarez.
And this is Everything's Fine, a show that asks the question, is everything fine?
The answer is no, but for the next half hour, we're going to talk through the issues we care about most and try to get to some solutions.
And we'll also be outside, in these streets, as they say, asking questions and talking to you, the people, and the topics that affect us all.
This week, our focus is the care economy, a critical part of the workforce built around serving and protecting those who need assistance.
Before we jump right in, Jorge, is everything fine for you right now?
Not 100%. Personally, I am still navigating some family health things at home, which we'll get into later. I'm grappling with the state of our world and the upcoming election. So I'm doing my best. I'm sure you are too. I appreciate you asking, but how about you? Is everything fine?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
I am feeling the same way as you, not 100%, spending too much time doom scrolling and worrying about the election, but hopefully soon everything will be fine.
And to keep it real, I think we're a little unwell at times, but we're gonna get through it.
We're gonna get there.
We got us. Let's now flip over to our correspondent in the field, Elizabeth Booker Houston, who will stop at nothing to teach about the importance of caregivers.
Hey y'all, this is Elizabeth Booker Houston and I am your woman on the street. I'm going to be asking questions about the caregiver economy here at Double X Comedy, which is a local open mic in the DMV at Detour Coffee Shop in Arlington, Virginia, because I figured who better to talk about the importance of an entire industry that provides support than a bunch of comics trying new jokes at an open mic. Hey, we are here at Double X Comedy with another comedian.
Hello, I'm Balia Janssen.
And we are going to ask you some questions, all right?
Okay.
It's about, so we're going to see what you know.
Yes.
Okay, you ready?
I think
Are
so.
you sure?
No.
You scared?
Yes.
Okay. You should be.
I know.
Not really.
You.
Chill out.
All right.
Calm down.
Heard.
Breathe. Okay, we got this. Do you know what the largest occupation is in the United States?
Firefighters.
That was a very quick answer. It was also incorrect. Do you know what the largest occupation is in the United States?
Nurses.
You're on the right track.
I'm just gonna guess like construction worker or something.
I feel like this might be me a little bit cheating. I've actually been a caregiver I was one of my grandmother's caregivers towards the end of her life. Through a team effort, she was able to, pass away at home and spend the last couple of years of her life at home. So the most disrespected person in America is a Black woman, and also caregivers. Caregivers.
Especially a Black caregiver.
Yes, ma'am.
You know what? Yeah, you're on to something. Yeah. What you think about that?
Firefighters save homes.
I mean,
No.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes they don't.
Not in the 60s.
Wow. What they do in the 60s?
What they did to Black people.
Oh,
Yeah.
they got dark fast.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I don't know why we did that.
That's all right. So my next question is, do you know what percentage of people in the U.S. are unpaid caregivers? What percentage of U.S. adults?
What percent?
Yeah.
Probably big, like 72.
Okay, that's way higher. You were on a whole pessimistic path.
I'm gonna go with 10%.
That's so low.
Really?
It is.
It's way higher than that.
Higher than that.
That's
You want to guess
terrible.
again? I know.
I would say between 40 to 60%.
You are so good at this. So
Okay.
it's 40.5%.
Okay.
49%.
40.5%. It's 40.5%.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that makes me feel better because
Okay.
I was just thinking of how many people have to take care of their relatives.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
It is a lot. Do you know what a sandwich caregiver is?
It's sandwich caregiver. No.
A sandwich caregiver.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with food. I know we're standing
Yeah,
here.
I know.
Has
Well,
nothing to do with food.
Sandwich caregiver. I'm guessing they're unpaid.
They can be.
Sometimes I say that I tell joke sandwiches, so I sandwich like old material, new material, old material.
Okay. That is someone who takes care of both a minor child and an older relative at the same time. So they're responsible for both.
Yes.
Sandwich in the middle.
Oh, I have those in my family. I didn't know that's a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what
The thing that my heart goes out to is that for these sandwich caregivers, it's like in addition to being a good mom and being a good daughter, because it's almost always women.
Yeah, 3 and 5.
Yeah.
3 and 5 of these positions are filled by women.
So do they help old people and young people?
Yes. Okay, that is great then. I like how prepared you are.
They are. Okay. Okay.
I was gonna say you're kind of out of the frame, yeah. We have talked about all of these caregiving positions, how many people do it, unpaid labor, 3 and 5 women, sandwich caregivers, all of this work. How many states do you think have implemented paid family leave?
Oh my God. Now I'm losing hope. I'm going to say like, I'll say 10 out of 50 states.
You know what? You're pretty close. Do you know how many states in the United States have paid family leave?
0.
It's not that bad. Okay, and final question.
Yes.
How many states in the U.S. have paid family leave?
Oh my God.
It's not a lot. It's probably like 20.
That's higher, actually. It's 14.
It's 12.
14? You were so close. Like, you were so good at these.
That was a loud clap. Okay.
I feel like I learned in school that the U.S. is like one of the only countries with no paid maternal or paternal leave.
So
Is it by state?
it's by state.
Okay.
And there's 14 states that have it, which out of 50 is still not good. And like
Yeah.
you said, as a country, we don't really have like a ton of it.
Okay.
But this was good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I'm so
All right. Yeah.
I was gonna say 10 at first, but I wanted
You know
to give our
what?
country
You
a
wanted
little
to
bit
give the benefit of the doubt. The United States, don't
did.
ever
I
give the United
shouldn't
States.
have did that. That
Look,
was
because
crazy.
our people should never give the United
Yeah,
States the benefit of the doubt. Don't ever.
That was
Honestly, there's no better person than you to do these interviews, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. That was incredible.
And now, with us in studio, we are thrilled to introduce Dorian Warren, co-president of Community Change and co-founder of the Economic Security Project. And before we get into our questions, Dorian, any thoughts about what you just saw from Elizabeth?
Well, I thought Elizabeth's reporting was just fantastic, both a bit humorous and informative, and especially for highlighting the caregivers who do the unsung work, often the unpaid work of caring for our loved ones. And so I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I had no idea that caregivers were some of the biggest sector of workers in our country.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Elizabeth really brought the energy, and that was so needed, in my opinion. None of my friends I know what the care economy is. So we would love if you can tell us a little bit more about what it is beyond what we heard from Elizabeth.
Well, the care economy is really kind of simple. We all actually participate in the care economy. We all do care work. In my case, I have 2 young daughters. One is 1, one is 4. It's everything from changing diapers, feeding, putting them to sleep. But I'm an Xer, so I'm in the sandwich generation, they call us, meaning I have caregiving responsibilities for my parents. My dad's 88, my mom's 83. They both want to stay in their homes. And so I also have to do some caregiving work for them. I often cook meals for my mother. I often do some help with my dad in terms of his health issues. That's all care work. I don't get paid for any of that.
Right.
So that's really what Elizabeth was drawing out, is the unpaid labor. And really important, it's often historically been labor that has been women of color, and particularly black women, that have done it unpaid, frankly, since 1619.
Wow.
And so it's worth $1 trillion a year in our economy, unpaid care work. And we all should talk about this and decide and make a different choice about how to pay people for that really important work for our loved ones.
Absolutely. That's such an interesting phrase as well that I've never really heard before. Can you tell us a little bit more about what sandwich caregivers are, what that means, and also would love to hear more information about how caregiving sort of exacerbates economic inequality along racial lines?
Absolutely. So the sandwich generation means, for people like me, so I'm in my 40s, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm in my 40s. It means I recently started a family. So on one side of the sandwich are my kids. Again, I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. I love them dearly. Toddlers, though, can be a little monsters sometimes. It's a whole lot of work. All right, so that's one side. But then the other side, because I'm in my 40s, I have parents they're actually a little older than the baby boomers, but these are folks who are aging and need more care, often either in home or at a facility like a nursing home or something. And so that costs money. I gotta send my daughters to a child care center, and I have to pay for my older parents to have care in their home when they need it. It's really expensive. So to give you a sense, I know a little bit about where you went to school and your college tuition.
Right.
what I pay for childcare for my kids is more than your college tuition per year. In fact, I live in Washington, D.C. It's literally $25,000 a year for one child in a childcare center. That doesn't include for elder care, so to take care of my parents. If I wanted a full-time person to care for my mother, let's say, that's roughly $68,000 a year to have somebody working 40 hours in the home. Now, I don't make that much money, I'm okay, but that's a lot of money. And it means that people like me are getting squeezed, and it means for both of you, you have to make some really hard choices. Do you want to start a family? What happens when your parents start to age? I think you already do some caregiving already. How are you going to pay for it? If you also want to get an apartment or buy a house or invest in your further education. So that's what the sandwich generation means. We're really squeezed because we have these caregiving responsibilities for the older generations and the younger generations. And frankly, like, I'll just say, who cares for me? Like, that's actually taxing on my mental health as well. And we know this is an epidemic. The Surgeon General actually said this is an epidemic among people in terms of doing the caregiving work that is unpaid or unseen or unvalued. To answer your final question, Alexis, it really, I mentioned before, the unpaid work of care is about it's worth $1 trillion in our economy. And the problem is the people that do the care work, all of the people that I work with in my child care center for my kids, it's all black women. They make about $14 to $16 an hour. So it's barely above the poverty line because we haven't valued the work historically. Those are the folks that should be, in my view, they should be getting paid much more than any lawyer or doctor because the age from 0 to 5 is the most important time in a child's life. Why, as a society, do we not value the care they're providing? When I drop my girls off and put them in the hands of those women every morning, their entire life is entrusted to them. Keep them safe, feed them, change their diapers. And why shouldn't they be getting $40, $50, $100 an hour to do that? We have made a collective choice to pay them near poverty wages, and that has a toll on our economy because they can't even care for themselves. What if they have kids? They can't afford childcare themselves, even though they're caring for my kids. So that's the cost. It's an economic cost to our whole economy and our whole society that we devalue care, don't pay people what they are worth, and then also people like me are squeezed by the cost.
Yeah, to care for people is something that feels priceless, and a lot of these people are working poverty wages.
No, for sure. And there's so much you said that I want to dig into a little bit more. But first and foremost, I definitely resonate with being a caregiver. Recently, although my mom didn't receive any life-threatening treatment for anything life-threatening, she had a surgery that led to her having less mobility than we anticipated. And I'm an only child, so I had to be the one over the last couple of weeks actually to show up for her, pick her up, take her to her follow-up appointments, even help her bathe, which was like a new stage of child's adulthood that I did not anticipate getting to at this point in my life at 25. I also want to say it's really interesting when you're talking about the sandwich generation because, at least from my experience, and I mean, you might relate to this, I can't even imagine like taking care of a kid right now. Like, I'm still taking care of myself. I'm still figuring out what my routines are. I like don't even have routines. I'm like struggling to get out of bed most days. So I can't imagine what it would be like to have a child to take care of, in addition to then a parent, which I'm now experiencing for the first time. So just wanted to sort of share some of those personal experiences first and foremost. But I'm curious to learn a little bit more from you about when it comes to sort of on the parents' side, right? What are some of the biggest factors that parents, guardians, caregivers oftentimes have to account for, like financially? I know that there's, on a personal level, a huge expense as well within households.
Really simple. Am I going to pay the rent or pay for childcare?
Right.
It's and in most of the country now, childcare costs just as much, and in lots of places more than rent. So think about that. I got to pay, and then so if I have to pay more for childcare than rent, right? Exactly. So then you have to make a choice. Okay, am I going to skip rent this month because I can't kind of skip the childcare payment? If I skip the childcare payment, who's going to care for the kid? Because I can't take her to the center. Maybe I can get a cousin or an auntie to come help. Or even if the kid is sick one day and I can't take her to the childcare center, I got to stay home from work. So then who's gonna cover for me at work if I have to do this care work at home? And it sounds like you've experienced that with your mom. Like, if you have to miss work to do care work with your mom, then you have to pick up some of his work. That is happening in your generation across the country, whether or not you have kids. Everybody has parents. So I'm kind of a preview of what is facing you in terms of the sandwich part. Like, you're not dealing with it maybe yet with the parents, but it's coming. You're dealing with it with your mom. But if you decide to then, at some point in 5, 10, 15 years to have children, then you will be facing that crunch, right, of dealing with kids, dealing with parents. How do you then show up to work? And if you have to miss work because a parent or a child is sick, who picks up the slack? That's a toll on all, that's a collective toll on all of us in terms of the workplace, our economy, our colleagues, our coworkers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your sort of experiences with care work in your daily life. I know that's the story for so many young Americans. I would also love if you could explain a little bit about how Medicaid sort of comes into the fold. I know in my family, we really rely on things like Medicaid and home health workers to have that elder care and to provide that elder care in our families when we're not able to leave work or provide that care ourselves. So can you talk a little bit about those numbers and how that sort of comes into the fold when it comes to the care economy?
So we have, in some ways, a public option around healthcare. Think of it as Medicaid and Medicare. Medicare is for older Americans, and Medicaid is for low-income, middle-class Americans to help provide for all sorts of healthcare.
We got it wrong earlier.
No, you didn't. No, I'm
No,
sure
no, we mixed up the aid and the care. But
Oh,
you know
and
what?
that's fine.
Now we learned.
But now you know. It's
No,
like
school us,
we,
teach us about
we
it.
all pay, right? As taxpayers, we all pay into this collective fund to provide care for everybody because it's actually cheaper. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, is the old saying. So we actually, by keeping people healthy, it actually benefits all of us. Okay, to your question. So people like my dad who don't want to go to a nursing home or an elderly long-term care place, but wants to stay in his home. He's 88. So he has the option of getting someone to come in, say 40 hours a week, to help provide care for him. Because when we get to that age, we all need that kind of care. We need extra hands for the care. Medicaid comes in because it helps pay for his care. And he lives in a red state. So lots of red states don't accept part of what we call the Affordable Care Act, or what everybody knows as Obamacare. There was this idea that we could expand it to states, and there was more money on the table. There are a lot of places. So if you live in the South, chances are you don't have access to the same Medicare that if you live in New York or Illinois, where I'm from. You don't have access to those resources because of a political decision by elected leaders in those places. So frankly, people are going into debt, or they're not going to work and missing out on making a living because they're providing care work that they can't afford, or because they don't have access to Medicaid in some places that would pay for that elder care. And frankly, this is like, I could give you all the numbers, but this is really a question around dignity and sort of morality, and who do we really, really care for? And is it fair that just because you can't afford it, let's say you're a childcare worker who makes $14 an hour and you have an elder parent who wants to stay at home, but you live in the South and you can't access Medicaid, what are your options? What are you supposed to do? If you live in New York, you're okay, because you have Medicaid here, and you can get resources. But if you're in another place, you're screwed. And it's actually not fair, and we can make different choices.
I also wanted to say, I wish I spoke to you a couple weeks ago when everything happened with my mom, because I could have used the consultation.
I'm here now, anytime.
I do have a question. So kind of stepping away from Medicaid, Medicare, in my mom's case, when I recognized this 45-minute drive back and forth, 2 times a day, taking her to an appointment was just eating up my work day, and I couldn't take off. I didn't know where to begin when it came to like looking for like a resource to help her out, or to even find a house aid, right? So what are some of the boundaries, or even like what are some of the barriers rather that are in the way of someone finding that care who may not be in like Medicare, Medicaid, right? I know private insurance is a whole other conversation. And a lot of young people like our age are going to be navigating this through their 20s and beyond. And so I think it'd be helpful for other folks who are in my position or who might be to have some of that like context.
We have decided to make it hard for everybody to access care. It is unacceptable and unjust. And so in the case of New York, there's some places you can go online and figure it out. But Jorge, I want to actually come to something you just said. You said 45 minutes each way, taking your mom to appointments. It really cut into your workday. It brings up, we've talked about childcare, we've talked about long-term and elder care. What we haven't talked about is paid family and medical leave. And when you just said that, it made me think, if Jorge had paid family and medical leave, he could actually probably take time off from work, still get paid, and still care for your mom.
And I didn't even know that was an option.
But,
right?
And it might be here in New York, but in most of the country, and in fact, across the country, it is no option. We have no national system of paid medical and family leave. We are the only rich democracy in the world that does not
That's wild.
pay people to provide the care they need. It's really shameful for people who have just given birth. Maternal health is such an important issue, and particularly for Black women in this country. We have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality across the world. It is unacceptable. And part of it is because when you give birth, you need to heal after. We say, particularly to mothers, give birth and then you need to be at work the next day because you don't have paid time off to even care for an infant or a newborn. That is outrageous. And we've just kind of let it be. And that part has to change. So not only could new mothers get paid leave to take care, maybe it's 8 weeks, 16 weeks. I'd love it to be 6 months or a year even, right? To really nurture that infant in their first few months of life. But someone like you who doesn't have a child but is taking care of your mother, why shouldn't you have access to paid leave as well?
Absolutely.
It should be paid family leave so that you can take care of a child or a parent. And that's the third, I just want to emphasize, that's the third pillar of what we understand as the care economy. It's through the life cycle. Child care, paid family and medical leave for when you have to care for somebody else, and then elder care and long-term care and disability care for when we're older and need care help as well, when we might be someone with a disability.
So I'd love to hear from you, and you touched a little bit on this when it comes to paid family leave and maternal leave, but maybe this is a tough question. What does a world that really values the care economy and the care that people are giving look like? What does an America that really values this work look like? Are there policies? Are there things we can do socially? Like, how does that come together?
Care will touch, and as we've talked about already, it'll touch each of our lives in particular ways, whether it's care for ourselves, care for a child, care for a family member, care for a parent. And care, it could look a different way. It could look like when we put the values of, frankly, love into public policy.
I love that.
Compassion.
And compassion.
Right.
Like people say there's a whole conversation right now about like how we care for the life of a child. Bullshit. That is not true because the policies don't reflect that. But to your question, Alexis, boy, it would mean we get to spend more time with our loved ones and not have to worry about making ends meet. That for younger people, younger children, they get to develop to their best potential and capabilities. To our parents or elders, we get to be there with them in the twilight of their long lives, hopefully. That's what it looks like. It looks like community. It looks like love. It looks like solidarity. It looks like compassion, as you said, Jorge. Why can't we have nice things? Yeah. And care is something we all experience. It touches all of us. Like everybody watching right now, it touches you. It touches all of us at some point. And someone cared for us. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if someone probably did a whole bunch of unpaid care work for us. Absolutely. So I'm all about, you know what? If people want to stay home and do care, I'm about paying people to do that. I also think for the care workers in our economy, which by the way, it is one of the fastest growing sectors of our economy, care work, meaning people that do in-home care or work at a not home health care, but a nursing home or a child care center, those jobs are going to keep growing. They're going to keep growing. And so how are we recruiting people and making them jobs that people want to take because they pay enough money for people to survive and take care of themselves. And by the way, care is so fundamental to just who we are as human beings. Why aren't we valuing that labor? And like, why can't we make that an attractive thing? Like, if I wish I had a choice
Right.
to decide, like, do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to be a childcare teacher? I would have made maybe a different choice if that was presented to me many
As an
years
option,
ago,
yeah,
right? As an option.
absolutely.
And so I think a world where we value care looks like people get to spend more time with their loved ones, that it's good for the economy, because it actually, if people are getting paid to do really valuable work, they're going to spend that money somewhere, right? So it's actually, the economic benefit is huge. And last but not least, it's really, again, an issue of dignity. Like, how do we treat each other at the beginning, middle, or end of life should really matter. And we should value how we treat each other.
No, absolutely. And this is a really important conversation for us to be having now, because I know a lot of Gen Zers are only going to continue to be impacted by having to take on this role, right, of being a caregiver. I don't say that from a place of it being an inconvenience, but rather something that we need to plan for, right? I don't think a lot of times we are given sort of the opportunity to think about, okay, what is going to happen 10 years from now, and how can we prepare for that? And being a caregiver might be one of those roles that a lot of us will take on. I know that there was this statistic I saw out there, and it was something along the lines of, like, by 2030, more than X number of baby boomers are going to be X age, which means, like, a lot of our parents, a lot of our own caregivers right now, right, are going to potentially be in the need of caregiving support, et cetera. With that being said, what are some of the things that Gen Zers and other young people, generations that come after us, can start to think of to prepare and have those conversations with family members, or even in their community? Or what resources should we start to, like, consider when it comes to, you know, preparing for what might be ahead, if that makes sense?
You're already modeling the preparation by having this conversation. So thank you both for doing this. To your statistic, by 2030, every single baby boomer ever born will be over the age of 65.
Wow, okay.
All of them.
Right.
Like, all of them.
Yeah.
Which means, how are we gonna care for them? How are they gonna care for themselves? And that will fall on my generation, it will fall on millennials, it will fall on your generation to figure it out. Because baby boomers kind of left us a mess already. I'm not sure they have prepared. If we're really being
Yeah,
honest,
yeah.
they've, like, left us a shit
Yeah.
show. So how, like, they're not prepared. So we're gonna have to pick it up. And so starting by having conversations. Your generation, I think something like 70% of Gen Zs are somehow socially or politically active, which is off the charts. So please stay active and start to have these conversations, get involved. Like, most of the changes we need in terms of policy to pay for care, which we can't afford as a country, it requires policy change. And that only comes by joining together and acting collectively. Rich people are going to be fine. The rich boomers, they'll be fine because they can pay for care.
Right.
The 99% of the rest of us have to figure something else out, and that's what coming together collectively in communities, it's also kind of the role of government. I know, like, we have feelings about the role of government, but that is the role of government, to provide at scale the care that generations of people will need, including all of us. So I think the conversations to unfold and that you will help lead is, to your point, like, how do we prepare? Call me, talk to me. There are lots of other people you could talk to. By having those conversations with people in your family and your friends and social network,
Right.
and then at some point taking action. Doesn't mean, and I'm not saying here, like, just go vote. There's lots of ways to engage and take collective action. Voting, showing up, making videos, TikTok videos, whatever it is, whatever way you feel moved to get engaged, it's really important, because it is going to be an all hands on deck moment.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. And sort of as we march towards this moment that we all sort of have to prepare for and get ready for, especially as Gen Zers, do you think that there's an element of the care economy that you're getting optimistic about? Is there something in which we're moving in the right direction? I'd love to hear more about just something positive out of this issue.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Boy, you want me to say positive stuff? I'm just all critique. Yeah, there's a lot of. So I work with about 50,000 childcare providers around the country who have all decided, like, kind of enough is enough. Like, this is bullshit. Enough is enough. We need some solutions. So I'll do the problems first, and then I'll come to the. And part of the problem is, like, half of Americans, and especially BIPOC communities, live in what are called childcare deserts, meaning there's no accessible childcare workers or a center near where you live. So it's a problem, because then if you don't have childcare, how do you get to work? Okay. A lot of childcare providers have said enough is enough. We need more funding from states and from the federal government to fix this problem. So to give you an example, in New Mexico, in 2022, the voters voted in favor of a constitutional amendment to the state's constitution that provides funding for childcare kind of permanently. Meaning, if you're like, say you make $50,000 or less in the state, maybe even $100,000 or less, which is up there, but you'll have access to childcare and you don't have to pay for it.
That's amazing.
Now, remember I mentioned earlier, like, childcare costs more than rent in lots of places. This is one state that said, we're going to show you how to do it, and it means, like, this is what it looks like. So we have solutions, and that only came from organizing and from taking collective action and like a 5 to 7 year fight to get this ballot initiative, this constitutional amendment on the ballot. Listen to what I just said. I said constitutional amendment. Like, it wasn't just a policy thing. They were like, no, this is going to be forever. For every resident of this state, you'll have access to this thing. It's a very bold idea that they won, and now it's being implemented. So what would that look like around the rest of the country? How do we replicate that?
Yeah.
What would it look like federally? And we had an experiment during the pandemic of the federal government putting billions of dollars into supporting childcare workers in the childcare industry. For 2 years, the money's run out, but it showed us that it's possible, like that we can make a different choice. We could actually fund childcare and paid family medical leave and long-term care if we wanted to. If we wanted to, we could actually do it instead of giving rich people more money. So we have the solutions, Alexis. It just is a question of power and coming together in collective action. And I think your generation is going to be the generation that says enough is enough. This is, like, it has to stop, and there's a different path here.
Well, it's good to know there are some solutions out there. We are not totally left in the dust. There are things we can do, which is great.
Yeah. I would love if we can actually take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Earlier we were talking about sort of some of the inequities, and that was a great question. I read somewhere, right, that when we think about the origin of the care economy and we think about why a lot of these positions are unpaid in the first place, something that was mentioned earlier is that most of these, most roles within the care economy are held by people of color, specifically Black women and other marginalized folks. Yeah. But I did read somewhere, and please, like, add the context, contextualize this for me, that it goes even further than that, because historically the role of a caregiver was a role that certain folks didn't want to carry, and so that sort of set precedent for what we're now seeing with the economic deficit, et cetera. Yeah, would love if I can hear some.
There's a direct line to the caregiving crisis we face now and how we don't value the work to 1619. A direct line. Black enslaved women were called wet nurses, meaning, you'll Google this later, they would breastfeed the master's children before their own kids. That was their role. Think about that for a minute. And I'm trying to keep it clean, I'm sorry. But that's just infuriating. And, like, a lot of their kids died because they were malnourished, because their role as enslaved people was to nurture and nourish the slave owners' kids. That's where our care economy started. And so from 1619 to, and if you think of, like, just the long sweep of American history, I think of it in 3 numbers, 25, 10, and 5, and those are decades. The first 25 decades of this country we were a slave society, where people were unfree, my people were unfree. The next 10 decades, that's the first 25 decades, next 10 decades is Jim Crow. So if you're in the South, you're still living under racial authoritarianism, you have no freedom. It's only been 5 decades, that's the last part, where we, that's 1965 to the present, basically, where we got the Voting Rights Act and Black people got the right to vote. We expanded our borders in terms of immigration and let lots of people in that have helped our economy and have helped our communities. So 25, 10, 5, think about that. The first 25 decades, the care economy was run by enslaved black women. The next 10 decades, same thing. I mean, it was slavery by another name. And then with the last 5 decades, especially with the wave of immigration, so it's the care economy is now mostly black women and mostly immigrant women. Because nobody else wants to do the work. And also, it doesn't pay enough because it used to be freaking free, right? And so we just have devalued it for centuries. We have devalued the work, we have devalued the people. And that we need a radical change, actually, in that long history. Sorry to nerd out a little bit on you, but we need a radical break with that. Like, it is time for something new and for something that represents our values of dignity and love and compassion. I keep coming back to your word, Jorge, in terms of how we care for each other. Like, there is a different path, and we literally have to say no more. Enough is enough.
That was such a great through line explaining how from 1619 to now we have constantly had no value or devalued care work, and I think that will really highlight to everyone why this occurrence happens. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise. I think we can both say we learned so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That was incredible. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both for inviting me on your show. I'm very honored, as slightly older than you both, to be joining
It's
you.
allyship.
Yes, indeed,
Gen
indeed.
Z
So
allyship.
thank
We
you for
love
the
it.
conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Welcome to
The Stitch.
So we are self-proclaimed TikTok natives. So every week we are going to bring you guys a video that has piqued our interest, and we're going to talk a little bit about it.
Not only are we going to talk a little bit about it, but we're also going to try to keep it real, give some hot takes, and see where it takes us. All right, could I show you a video now?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a video by my friend and a creator who I really admire, but she makes points. And you're also, I learned before this, Cuban as well, right?
Yes. Cuban fam.
So we're about to get into it for a second. All right.
You're like me, as someone who's very progressive, very left-leaning, as someone who's a Mexican-American who understands just how xenophobic this country has been towards Latinos in general, whilst also trying to reconcile that Latino voting trends are starting to trend towards the right. If you have been racking your brain, just like I have, trying to understand why folks in our community are supporting politicians who actively say that mass deportations should be happening, that birthright citizenship should be revoked, that we are just anchor babies, that we are fueling crime.
I definitely recommend watching the entire video because Marlene gets into a bunch of really great points. But what I find so interesting as a Cuban myself is that so many Cubans in this country are becoming increasingly patriotic. The nationalism is increasing despite the leaders who are making decisions when it comes to our livelihoods, making active decisions that essentially harm us more than help our community. So I'm surprised that more and more Latinos are starting to become more nationalistic in their viewpoints. And I think that's worth discussing and interrogating a bit more.
You know what's so interesting about this? And I think about the same thing, the rise in American sort of nationalism within the Latino community a lot. I wonder, have you thought about how like religion and conservative values sort of come into play with this, in this issue? Because I think that's something that is definitely sort of pushing people in that direction, people that are hyper religious and super into America.
I agree that religion is probably a big factor in Latinos' connection to religion, especially in the US. I find from personal experience that a lot of Latinos identify with more conservative viewpoints, and therefore the argument around abortion might be really appealing to them right now. That in combination with a number of other factors, but it's still so confusing to me because even when we think about immigration, right, and the attack on immigration and certain things that have been said when it comes to the Latino community, it's still like there's still some dissonance that I'm navigating.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah. Especially, I've seen this and it's very kind of disheartening to see, but xenophobia even coming into the Latino community and into our spaces and I think we can really just like attribute this to a lot of us and them framing of different issues. Like we are a different camp than those immigrants that are trying to come into America and be woven into the fabric of our nation. And I think it's so sad to see because it's like, whether it was one generation before you or more than that, it's like we all were immigrants once. It's like true of like almost everyone in America. So it's sad to see us revert in that direction. And I'm like, let's get back on course.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, have you seen this video?
Which one?
I realized that I can't really relate to people that are just pro-choice. Like, I've noticed that a lot of people, they have like certain things that they think are okay to get an abortion for, and others where they're like, no. But I'm very much like pro-abortion. Like, I do not think that everyone needs to have kids. I think that less people need to have kids because not everyone is fully equipped to be a parent. I wish more people would choose not to have kids. I'm never going to be one of those people that are like, oh, she uses abortion as birth control and whatever. For one, people don't really do that. And if they do, I'm not rocking that baby to sleep. I'm not paying for shit. So let's return that thing to the sender. What does that have to do with me? I don't care. And I am of the belief that a lot of people would have been a lot better off if they had chosen not to have kids. And I think that a lot of children, blessing to people that want them, whatever, but like, I just don't care. I don't care if you get pregnant like every 2 months and get an abortion. That has nothing to do with me. Like, I don't care what stage you're in, what the reason is. I don't care if you want to abort the baby because the guy that you were going to have it with looked at you the wrong way yesterday. I don't care. I don't care. Any reason to have one is fine by me. I'll even take you there if we're friends.
I completely agree with this creator. I think we've created a climate where a lot of women feel like they have to explain or have very specific reasons for having an abortion. This is because with the attack of reproductive care, a lot of women are coming out and speaking about their stories with medical issues or societal issues that have brought them to get abortions. But I think we really need to get to a place where if someone says that they want to get an abortion simply because they don't want to have a child, they should be able to do that, and their story and their experience should be valid. Now, what do you think about that?
No, that's really interesting. I think there is this narrative, as we've always seen, with women always having to like over-justify their decisions, including an abortion. I was thinking about that creator's video you shared with me where the individual was sharing using the example of sports betting, right? That in some states it's completely illegal to bet on sports, and in others it's not, and that's okay. You can go to your respective states. But Texas was suing so that it can have access to women's reproductive history, so that way they could take action when it comes to women in their state and their decisions around abortion. And I think, again, that's why women continuously feel the need to have to justify it, and why not just women, but folks who can birth a child, right, are feeling like they need to overly justify this. And I think it's super frustrating, and I'm glad that folks are calling out that it's okay to just have an abortion and make decisions around your healthcare because you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up too, because I feel like more and more legislation is making women feel like commodities. We are fully fledged human beings that should have a full control over what we do with our bodies and what we do with our healthcare. It's crazy that people think women need to go a million extra miles in order to have their own control over their lives.
Right.
It's insane.
And like Kamala said, what law exists that makes decisions around a male's body? Name
None.
one. Exactly.
None.